Ty had faced storms, injuries, and heartbreak before, but nothing prepared him for what waited deep in the wilderness that day. One wrong step, one frozen moment, and Ty's life would shift in a way no one at Heartland saw coming. What he encountered out there wasn't just dangerous, it was personal. And once it happened, there was no turning back. The sun was barely up when Ty rode into the wilderness. Far beyond the familiar trails near Heartland, the land stretched wide and empty, covered in tall trees and thick brush. It's the kind of place where thoughts grew louder the farther you went. Ty had chosen this path on purpose. He needed space. Space from memories, from questions, and from the weight he carried every day without saying a word. His horse moved carefully over the uneven ground. It was crunching softly against dirt and fallen leaves. Normally, the forest greeted riders with soundbirds calling, branches moving, life all around. But today was different. The quiet pressed in on Ty, heavy and uncomfortable. He slowed his horse, scanning the trees, his instincts telling him something wasn't right. Ty told himself he was imagining things. After everything he'd been through, his mind often played tricks on him. Still, his hand tightened on the reins. He had learned long ago to trust his gut, especially out here. The wilderness didn't give second chances to people who ignored warning signs. A sudden snap echoed somewhere behind him. Ty turned quickly, his heart jumping. Nothing. Just trees standing still, shadows stretching across the ground. He listened closely, holding his breath. The silence returned, thicker than before. Even his horse shifted uneasily, ears twitching, sensing the tension. Ty took a slow breath and urged the horse forward, but every step felt heavier. The air itself seemed to change, colder, sharper. This wasn't just a quiet morning ride anymore. It felt like the land was watching him, waiting. Ty had no idea that within minutes, something would step out of that silence, something that would force him to face fear, memory, and a truth he wasn't ready for. And once it began, there would be no easy way out. Ty guided his horse deeper into the wilderness, away from the paths most riders avoided. This wasn't a mistake. He had chosen this place because it was empty, because no one could find him here. And because the quiet felt easier than answering questions he didn't have the strength to explain. At Heartland, everyone could see when something was wrong. Out here, the land didn't ask him to talk. The truth was, Ty had been carrying a weight that had nothing to do with injuries or work. It was the kind of weight that sat in his chest late at night. The kind that returned every time he looked at Amy and wondered how much she could really sense. Ty loved her more than anything, but love didn't make fear disappear. Some thoughts were easier to face alone. This ride was supposed to clear his head. Ty believed that if he pushed himself far enough, rode long enough, the noise inside him would finally quiet down. The wilderness had always been honest with him. It didn't judge. It didn't remind him of old mistakes. It simply existed, strong and unforgiving, just like life itself. As he rode, memories crept in anyway. Moments he thought he had buried. Choices he couldn't undo. Ty had learned to survive hard things, but surviving didn't always mean healing. Some scars stayed hidden, shaping decisions in ways no one else could see. He stopped near a small clearing and looked around, taking in the wide sky above the trees. This place felt familiar, almost comforting. Ty didn't know why, but part of him felt drawn here, like something unfinished had been waiting. He brushed it off, telling himself it was just another thought that would fade. But deep down, Ty knew this ride wasn't random. Something inside him had pushed him here, to this exact spot on this exact day. And whatever he was trying to avoid was closer than he realized. The wilderness wasn't just giving him space. It was leading him toward a moment he could no longer outrun. I felt it before he saw it. A strange pressure settled in his chest, the kind that made his pulse quicken for no clear reason. His horse slowed on its own, muscles tight, ears pointed straight ahead. Animals knew things people didn't, and right now, his horse was telling him something was wrong. The trees around him stood too still. No birds called from the branches. No small animals moved through the brush. Even the wind seemed to have disappeared. Ty scanned the ground, and noticed deep marks in the dirt, fresh, uneven, and far too large to ignore. Whatever made them hadn't been here long. He leaned forward in the saddle, eyes narrowing. Broken branches lay scattered nearby, snapped with force, not weather. This wasn't nature doing what it always did. This was something moving through the forest with purpose. Ty's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but his body stayed frozen, caught between caution and curiosity. A low sound drifted through the trees. Not loud, but close enough to make his skin prickle. Ty's grip tightened on the reins as his horse shifted, ready to bolt. Ty whispered softly, trying to calm him, even as his own breathing grew shallow. Every sense sharpened. The smell of damp earth mixed with something else, something wild. Ty knew this feeling. He had felt it before in dangerous moments, when there was no room for mistakes. The kind of moment where one wrong move could change everything. He considered retreating, telling himself there was no shame in trusting a warning. But something held him there, a pull he couldn't explain. The deeper truth was hard to admit. Part of him needed to know what was out there. Then the brush ahead began to move. Ty's heart pounded as the sound grew closer, heavier. Whatever was coming wasn't afraid. It wasn't hiding. And in that moment, Ty understood this wasn't just another tense ride. The wilderness had shifted from quiet to threat. The bushes ahead burst apart without warning. Ty's horse reared, letting out a sharp cry as Ty fought to keep his balance. His heart slammed against his ribs as a massive shape stepped into view. It wasn't just the size that shocked him, it was how close it was. Too close. Close enough for Ty to see the power in its body and the wild focus in its eyes. For a split second, neither of them moved. Ty's instincts took over. He leaned low, steadying his horse, every muscle tight and ready. The air between them felt charged, heavy with danger. This wasn't a moment that allowed fear. Fear would get him hurt or worse. He had seconds to decide what to do, and no one was coming to help. The animal shifted its weight, letting out a low sound that echoed through the trees. Ty could feel his horse trembling beneath him, desperate to run. He whispered again, trying to calm both of them, even as his own hand shook. Backing away slowly felt like the right move, but the ground behind him was uneven, boxed in by trees. Then something unexpected happened. The animal hesitated. Its gaze locked on Ty's, not with blind anger, but with awareness. Recognition. It wasn't just reacting, it was thinking. That realization sent a chill through Ty. This wasn't a random attack. Something had brought this creature here, and now it was deciding what to do next. Time pressed down on Ty. Every breath felt loud. He knew one sudden movement could push the situation past the point of control. So he stayed still, trusting the same calm he used with frightened horses. Slow breath. Soft voice. No threat. The wilderness seemed to lean in around them, waiting. And then just as suddenly as it had appeared, the animal took a step closer, forcing Ty to face a truth he could no longer ignore. This encounter wasn't just about survival. It was about what kind of man he was when fear stood right in front of him. The next few seconds blurred together in a rush of movement and sound. The animal lunged, and Ty reacted on instinct, pulling hard on the reins as his horse spun sideways. The sudden motion saved them from the worst of it, but not completely. Ty felt a sharp jolt as something slammed into his leg. Knocking the air from his lungs, his horse bolted, racing through the trees as branches whipped past. Ty clung to the saddle, fighting through the pain that burned down his leg. Every step sent a wave of heat through his body, but he forced himself to stay upright. Falling now would mean being helpless out here, alone. After what felt like forever, the horse slowed, sides heaving. Ty guided him to a stop near a rocky slope and slid down carefully, nearly collapsing when his injured leg hit the ground. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let panic take over. He had survived worse than this, but surviving didn't mean he was safe yet. He leaned against a tree, catching his breath, his hands shaking. Blood darkened his pant leg. Not life-threatening, but serious enough to matter. Ty pressed his palm against the wound, grounding himself, his thoughts racing. He was hurt. He was far from help. And the wilderness wasn't done with him. as the pain settled into a deep ache, something else rose to the surface: clarity. The encounter had stripped away distraction. Out here, none of the things he avoided mattered anymore. Only truth did. Ty realized he had been riding away from more than memories. He had been avoiding a choice, a decision he knew he couldn't delay forever. The animal hadn't just tested his strength, it had forced him to face how fragile control really was. He looked around at the trees, the sky peeking through the branches, and felt small in a way he hadn't in years. Survival wasn't just about getting out alive. It was about what you carried back with you. And Ty knew, deep down, that if he made it home, he wouldn't be the same man who rode out that morning. Amy stood near the barn at Heartland, brushing dust from her gloves, when a sudden heaviness settled in her chest. He looked around at the trees, the sky peeking through the branches, and felt small in a way he hadn't in years. Survival wasn't just about getting out alive. It was about what you carried back with you, and Ty knew, deep down, that if he made it home, he wouldn't. Amy stood near the barn at Heartland, brushing dust from her gloves, when a sudden heaviness settled in her chest. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a quiet pull, a feeling that tugged at her without warning. She looked up toward the open land beyond the ranch, her heart beating faster for no clear reason. She had learned to trust these moments. Over the years, Amy had felt them before, those small, unexplainable shifts that told her someone she loved was struggling. Ty's name crossed her mind instantly, sharp and certain. He had gone out early that morning alone, saying he just needed a ride. At the time, she hadn't questioned it. Now, she wished she had. Amy tried to shake it off, telling herself Ty was capable, careful. He always was. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It grew stronger, pressing against her ribs like a warning. She turned slowly, scanning the horizon as if she might see him riding back any second. Inside, doubt crept in. Ty had been quieter lately, carrying something he hadn't shared. Amy knew that silence. She had lived with it long enough to recognize when someone was hurting behind calm eyes. And now, standing there, she felt the distance between them more clearly than ever. She closed her eyes, taking a steady breath, grounding herself. Whatever was happening, Ty wasn't alone. Not really. Their connection had always been deeper than words, stronger than miles. Amy held on to that, letting it steady her racing thoughts. Still, the sense of unease remained. Amy didn't know where Ty was or what he was facing. But she knew one thing for certain: something had gone wrong. And when he came back, things would change. Some truths could only stay hidden for so long. The wilderness might have tested Ty's strength, but Amy felt in her bones that it had also touched his heart. And that meant Heartland would feel the impact soon enough. The same man who rode out that morning. The sun dipped lower as Ty slowly made his way out of the wilderness, every movement sending pain through his leg. He stayed focused, guiding his horse with care, refusing to let exhaustion win. The forest no longer felt threatening, but it felt different now, like it had taken something from him and left something else behind in its place. By the time familiar land came into view, Ty's strength was fading. He wasn't just hurt in body. His thoughts were heavier, clearer, sharper. The encounter replayed in his mind again and again: the pause, the choice, the moment where fear and calm stood side by side. He realized how close everything had come to ending, how quickly life could change without warning. When Ty finally reached Heartland, he didn't announce his return. He slipped into the quiet of the ranch, carrying the weight of what had happened alone. He cleaned the wound himself, more focused on the thoughts he couldn't shut out than the pain he could manage. That night, Ty stood outside under the open sky, staring at the stars. He understood now that the wilderness hadn't been the real test. The real test was what came next, whether he would keep running from the truth or finally speak it out loud. Amy watched him from a distance, sensing the shift even without words. Something in Ty had changed, something deep. And as the wind moved through the trees around Heartland, one thing became clear: the encounter wasn't over. It had only started a chain of events that would shake everything Ty thought he knew. Because some journeys don't end when you make it home, they begin there.